Started. Good afternoon. My name is Sheila Lamb, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC Network. For those of you that are not familiar with our organization, the Virginia Small Business Development Center is a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout Virginia. With 26 locations across the Commonwealth, we provide training and technical assistance to small businesses in their local communities. Our one-on-one advising services are available at no charge. Today's webinar, Mobile Apps, How to Plan, Execute, and Launch, is presented by the Virginia SBDC Network. Please mark your calendars for the next webinar in our Digital Bootcamp series, Keeping Up with Digital Marketing, A's for Your Q's, ChatGPT, on August 6th. I'll drop the registration link in the chat momentarily. We are recording today's presentation, and it will be posted on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Due to the large number of participants, everyone's microphone is muted and the chat feature is turned off. But if you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the Q&A box and we will address them at the end of the session. We have also enabled the live transcript function, which you can show or hide via your own meeting controls. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter for today's session, Cameron Nelson, CEO of Tenzing Startup Consultants. Cameron has over 19 years of experience in technology and is a senior tech consultant in Silicon Valley, helping Fortune 500 companies improve their digital marketing and e-commerce. At the same time, he also founded several tech companies, including a software as a service website for tree preservation and a blockchain platform for nonprofits. Cameron is accomplished in language, culture, has an MBA and MA. He believes new technology products have the ability to help shape our world for the better. Please join me in welcoming Cameron Nelson.
Thanks for the introduction. And hello, everybody. Welcome to this online session, Mobile Apps. I'm going to be talking about mobile app development. We're going to be exploring some of the trends recently that might influence your decision to launch a mobile app for your business. And at the end of the presentation, we'll have some time to answer your questions. So please jot down any questions you have as we go, and we'll get through as many of those as we can at the end. So with that, let's jump right into it. So we're going to explore the realm of developing mobile apps. And the first question we should be asking is a mobile app right for your business? It's not right for every type of business or every type of startup. So we're going to walk through some of those key considerations. First off, the mobile app market, which is both the Android and the iPhone market, is very crowded. There's a lot of apps. So it's really essential before you begin this journey to have a good strategy and a good marketing plan for your mobile app to make sure any development money and marketing money you spend on that is money well spent and that you see a good return on your investment. In the Apple Store, also called the iOS Store, there's currently over 1.8 million apps. And it has $87 billion in total sales as of 2022. It's increasing by about 2% each year. On the Android or Google Play Store, there's more apps. There's 3.7 million, but there's all about half the amount of total sales, and there's 11% decrease. So as we see, some of the trends are that the Apple Store per app is monetizing those better. So that's one indication that the apps in that store are slightly more premium, or that the owners of the iPhones have more money to spend on apps in general. So they're more likely to buy apps or purchase in-app purchases or whatever your monetization strategy is for your app. Those apps are being monetized to a higher extent. Most people, when they develop a mobile app, will be developing and launching in both stores simultaneously, though certain apps and certain businesses might decide to just develop for one store only to save some money on the development cost. So a couple of questions to ask yourself at this point. Are you ready to invest a sizable amount of money in developing your mobile application? I know a question most of you have for me is, what would it take to develop a mobile app that I have in mind? So the range for mobile app development, it can start for as little as about $1,000. That would be using an offshore developer. And I'll talk a lot about choosing the right developer. But your main choices are onshore in the US or offshore somewhere outside of the US. So $1,000 is an entry-level app from an offshore developer. And it gets more expensive if you come to the US, and then they can go up in price from there. The next question to ask yourself is, are you ready to dedicate a large amount of your own time to oversee the creation of this mobile app? It's never a smooth or hands-free process. If you think, I have an idea, I'll just tell a developer my idea and they'll understand how to answer all the unanswered questions that they come across. They're going to do it perfectly without my input. That is rarely the case. If you're going to develop a mobile app and it's your first time doing so, when you hire your development team, you'll be in almost daily contact with them for a couple of weeks at least, maybe even a couple of months. So you need to budget that time. And the main risk of a development process is the founder or the entrepreneur of the business doesn't have the time enough to dedicate to answering those questions and ensuring the app is meeting all the needs that you have. So here's some key advantages and also some cautions for developing a mobile app for your business. First off, mobile apps are being used by even billions of people around the world. So you have a huge marketplace. Everybody's on their phones more and more every year. So that is a big and growing pool of potential revenue for you. It also provides an opportunity for engagement with your customers. So if you are reading the reviews they leave of your app, or if they're emailing your support, asking questions about the app or your business, you can be getting feedback, and that can help inform your main business. It can help inform your app strategy. It provides an opportunity for increased customers and especially increased sales. There's a lot of ways to make money with an app, different monetization strategies. You can sell the app for a set price. You can have in-app purchases or a subscription model, and a combination of all of those things. So you could have your main business and you could have your app as a second revenue generator for your business and a second funnel for people to find out about your business and generate more revenue for you. There's several ways to go about creating mobile apps. So you do have flexibility and you can find a solution that fits your budget and especially your needs. When it comes to looking at what features your app is going to provide, you can have some flexibility in how you go about developing that. And an app has quite a low overhead cost. So standard businesses have usually a higher overhead cost than running a company that's kind of centered around an app. So you have the flexibility of gaining more profit for a business model that has an app than a business that is without an app. However, there's some main cautions that I would also bring up, which is the first one, it can be challenging to develop an app for the first time because you're probably going to think of features as you go that you didn't think of at the beginning. So this changes the scope and the complexity of the project, can cost more, and also can increase the time. Secondly, unexpected issues usually do come up. These are going to be questions you hadn't thought of before, and you're going to need to find answers to guide the developers. And the longer it takes you to find answers, the more delay that can be introduced into the process and increase the cost. If your app is not coming up with a new or innovative idea or a solution to a problem, then your app has a higher chance of failing. So you always want to make sure that your app is going to be solving a really pressing problem for your client's needs. Another important thing to consider is make sure your business has enough money to see the app development through to the very end. Now, if you increase the complexity and the scope of the app midway through the process, your cost will go up too. So I would always budget 10 to maybe 25% higher than the original projected cost, because usually, from my experience, you'll end up wanting to add new features that you discover that are really important, and you didn't think of them at the beginning. So you need that extra cushion of funding to finish the development. And another big risk and a key reason why I see a lot of app projects fail for business owners is they just didn't pick the right development team. So I'm going to be focusing in on how to choose the right development team to make sure you can get the quality, the time, and get it at the price you need and not make some common mistakes that I see. So before we go any further into some of those other details, I want to talk about what are some of the trends happening this year, because every year and even every quarter, we do see changes and updates in how apps are being built. And some of these trends will be very important for your considerations. So the first one is free apps, or those that cost nothing to get into initially, make up 98%. of the app stores. And this highlights the importance of giving your app away for free, but making your money through things like in-app purchases or advertising in your app or even a subscription model. Only 2% of apps overall are paid for apps right out of the gate. So you'll probably be in this category of giving your app away for free. Secondly, people love apps that are games. And so Candy Crush Saga is one of the top grossing games in the US. And in fact, most of the top grossing apps by revenue are games. So your app doesn't need to be a game, but you can incorporate elements of games into any kind of app. This is called gamification. And we see this if you use Duolingo for learning languages or many other popular apps that have nothing to do with games. They have ranking systems or leaderboards, or you win stars or diamonds, and these give you certain rewards in the app. And this is called gamifying an app. So this is a very popular trend in 2024, and it's something that I highly recommend you talk to your developer about. How can you gamify your app idea, make it more engaging, and make people come back for it more frequently? Business apps are ranked as the second most popular category after gaming. So these can be things like your email, Zoom for communications, and anything that have to do with a business type industry. Now, health and wellness apps have seen a large increase in usage. Things like M Health and Calm, which focuses on meditation and things like that, they have over 3.9 million downloads. So health and wellness is a huge category. And the last key trend is that millennials often have more than 67 apps installed on their smartphones, but they only use about 25 of them regularly. So there's a lot of apps on phones people don't use, and it just brings to the fore the fact that you have to have a really unique and innovative idea in your app, because you want to make sure your app is one of these 25 that are going to be used on somebody's phone. Otherwise, it won't be generating the amount of revenue for you that you would like to see. Next, we're going to talk about these two different platforms. It's important that everybody has an understanding of the pros and the cons and the differences between these two platforms. Many of you would develop an app and it will be launched on both platforms because that's where your market is and it's spread out equally. Others might decide to develop on one or the other platform only because you want to save money and time, and maybe you feel like that is where your market mostly is. So when deciding on which platforms, consider these criteria. You want to consider the quality and the quantity of apps on these stores, how the size of the platform, how big is it, and market share. What's the development process like? And what's the approval process like? And finally, what are the main cost considerations? So the Android or Google Store runs on the platform in the code language called Java, where Apple uses a language called Swift. In market share terms, Android globally has about 87%, whereas Apple has 13%. Now, this is globally, and in some continents, such as Africa or Latin America, well over 90% of people use Android. In the US, things are a bit different, and it's a bit more even between Android and Apple, and it fluctuates every single month. Places like Europe, also with a higher income demographic, tend to favor Apple more than Android. But globally, Android has a huge amount of the market share. When it comes to the development time and the complexity, developing on Android takes a little bit more time than to develop on iOS. And this is because of the Java language. It's just a bit more time consuming than the Swift programming languages. The approval process to get your app on the Android store is very short. It can take just several days, whereas the Apple approval process takes much longer. They're a bit more cautious and careful what they let in. And so this can take several days or even several weeks, depending on if they have to do more in-depth code reviews of your app. The development cost for Android is slightly higher than iOS, and Apple is usually a little bit less than Android. And again, the demographics favor a lower income group for Android and a higher income group for the Apple operating system. So if your business model sells primarily to a higher income or a lower income group, you might decide to develop your app appropriately because you know what type of phone they most likely are carrying. And as far as the cost of getting your app onto these stores, Android has a one-time $25 fee. And then they take a 15% fee of all the revenue you make from the app up to the first $1 million each year. And then they're going to take 30% of your revenue. So if your app is making less than $1 million, you only pay 15% fee on that. Apple is pretty similar. They have a $100 annual fee though, and then they take 15% fee for the first million and then jump up to 30% fee after that. So they're pretty closely mirror each other in the costs, but Android is a bit cheaper with the initial fee up front. So there's 8 key steps that I want everybody to be aware of. And these are the keys to develop a successful app. And we're going to talk about these 8 as we go through the presentation. So the first one is doing your market research. In this step, you're going to think of your target audience. Who are they? You need to understand them. What is their income? Where are they located? And your app's usefulness is only going to be as valuable as the problem it solves for them. So get some feedback from your customers and your potential customers about this app you intend to build. Ask, is this useful to you? Is this valuable to you? And it'll help inform you on how to build your app. The second key step is scoping out your app appropriately. So once you've gotten feedback from your potential customers, you can create a feature list. This can include everything from having a login screen to having a feedback button. If you want videos in your app, that would be a feature. And you'll bullet point out all of the features that you want. And this is really important when talking to developers to get a scope and a price for your app. In this stage, you can also identify things that are critical for your app to have and those that are going to be nice to have features that maybe some of your target market wants, but not all of them. This will help you whittle down the critical features and get your app to the lowest price point possible. This is called your minimum viable product, or when your app fulfills the critical core needs for your business and for your vision of the app. And then having those nice to have features can be tacked on later and added on when you have revenue to do so. Step 3 is to find the right developer. Again, this is a really critical step. I see a lot of business owners who before I got a chance to meet with them, start to app development with the first developer they Googled, and they just contacted them and they paid, and they just did not have a good experience. Sometimes the project completely failed and they were out some money. So it's important to focus on this step. Always shop for 2 or 3 different quotes. Compare your local versus your offshore options. Read a lot of reviews. Even look at their past portfolio of apps. Test them out. It's good to spend more time in this step to avoid future problems later. Step number 4 is your business planning. You want to know if you have an existing business, you already have a revenue stream, you already have your expenses. This is going to be an expense to develop an app. So you want to make sure you have a good strategy of how you're going to get that back. What does your return on this investment look like? What are you going to charge for the app and how many users do you expect to be getting? Make sure you have a path to profitability with this app as opposed to not thinking of those details. You want to make sure you can understand what revenue model your app should have to make sure it's going to be a profit generator for your business, not just a big expense. The 5th step is your marketing approach. In this step, you're going to go back to your market research in step number 1. You hopefully talk to some people, you got some feedback. You want to further identify who your target customers are. There's a term in marketing called your buyer personas, and this is a useful thing to do with a marketing professional or by yourself. Understand what they're looking for and their needs in the app. Where do they find their information? Maybe it's Facebook, maybe it's TikTok, maybe it's not online at all. So you can understand where to market to them, and you can build that marketing strategy to market to them where they're going to be looking, and also what is the right words and images to use to communicate with them. Step number 6 is building a prototype. In this step, you'll take your scope from your step number 2 with that minimum viable product you decided to build first, and you're going to build that out and you're going to test it. And you're going to get as much user feedback as you can. So it's never going to be sufficient for you as the business owner and the client building this app to test it yourself. You want to have many different people testing it. It's inevitably you're going to find little things. Sometimes they're bugs, and sometimes they're just things you overlooked that you need to fix. And this brings us to step number 7, which is launching the app, and you're going to conduct these beta tests. So we'll talk about what these beta tests mean in detail, but essentially it's a way for you to collect this additional feedback and fix any bugs before you start promoting the app. Because when you promote the app, you're going to convert all the leads and the people you've gotten feedback from into paying customers, hopefully. You're going to convert as many of them as you can. And if you've done a good job with your market research and your market approach, you will be able to market your app to them, and they will start paying for your app. And they'll also, if they like the app, share it and spread it. You can also promote the app on social media, paid ads, and other types of events. So, step number 1, you want to find a big problem that's going to get worse and fix it. And this is a good approach, of course, to any type of business, but especially with an app, because you can't be trying to build an app that just doesn't solve a big problem for people. It probably will be in that category of apps that are not used very often. So, a few steps on conducting successful market research. I always recommend you conduct a lot of interviews. Speaking to people there's no shortcut around it. You just need to talk to people. It can be over the phone, in person, even over email, and talk to people in every sector of your target customer kind of personas, and see what they say about the app and see what they say they would use it for. And when you're interviewing people, you're essentially collecting data. But don't leave it open-ended. You should go into a chat with somebody with 5 or 10 or 20 questions and collect that data, keep it focused. If you end up with too much data, you'll have just too much feedback with no clear direction on how to build the app going forward. And a good way to collect data and keep it focused is to use some online forums. You can send a form to somebody, but that doesn't usually result in a large percentage of people taking the time to fill out a form. So I prefer to schedule a phone call or even just meet somebody face to face. And you can fill out the form as you talk to them on their behalf. Kind of, again, you're collecting that data and you have the questions there. There's a lot of free ways to make forms. And so I'm linking to 4 of my favorite ones right here that are all completely free and are really going to help you collect that data, even make some bar charts and pie graphs out of the data you collected to help visualize your data and help you make better decisions. And the step number 4 is always to say thanks to somebody who's given some of their time and feedback to you, because you want to convert them into your users for the app. So if you stay in touch with them and give them updates periodically, you could say, well, based on your feedback, we've started development of the app. We're very excited. Maybe a few weeks later, you're able to say, here's a link to beta test the app. We'd love your additional feedback and support. And then when the app's launched, of course, you would send them the link to get the app in the app stores. And if they like the app, a lot of these people can become early advocates and spread the word to friends and family and colleagues and help your app expand faster. Step number 2 of app development is scoping your app and figuring out how to develop this minimum viable product. So to illustrate this, we have these 2 different pyramids. The minimum viable product approach is the one on the right. And so what you're doing is you're coming up with what are the functions of the app? How do you make the app reliable so it doesn't crash or have bugs? How do you make it usable? Is the user interface intuitive? And emotional design is, the gamification concept or other things you want to have the app to do to kind of have that emotional impact on people so they'll come back and use it more. An MVP will take a little sliver of all these elements. It won't just build out a chunk of the functional and forget about being reliable, being usable, and having any element of emotional design. So keep in mind, an MVP is this approach, and your development team will probably be aware of this, but you as the sponsor of this app and the builder of this app should also be aware of what an MVP is trying to accomplish. It's focused on building those core app features first. It provides you with that early testing opportunity. You can gather some feedback and get that market validation of some of your features and ideas so you can pivot and change. And it's going to be less costly and time consuming to develop an MVP first than trying to put everything, all the bells and the whistles into a big old app right at the beginning without really testing your theories and testing the market need for that app. Another way to illustrate the MVP process. So let's say you're trying to build a means of movement for a human being. So how not to build a minimum viable product would be, okay, you start with a circle and then two circles, and that turns into a skateboard, which turns into half a car, which turns into a full car. Rather, the correct way to build an MVP for an app will be like this. You're still trying to build a means of movement for human beings. So you start with something simple like a skateboard. Your next version is like a scooter, bicycle, motorcycle, and then the car. So the difference here is even from the very first iteration, it's actually a functional, usable product that solves the same problem, right? Whereas the top versions do not. They don't solve the problem very well at all. So again, this is the MVP process. You're starting with the skateboard, getting to the car, not the top version. So step number 3, which is very important, is how to select the right developer. There's great developers here in Virginia, across the US. I've worked with many different development companies here. There's also the offshore developers who are located primarily in India, China, or Eastern Europe. There's some pros and cons with both options, but they can both be valid depending on your needs. So the first consideration is the quality. What is the quality of this app going to be? The quality means everything from, are there bugs? Does it crash? Does it look good? Does it function well? US-based developers and offshore-based developers do equally well in this category. And that's because developing an app is very much based on programming languages and mathematical formulas, and people in the US or offshore can do that just as well. So the quality is usually very, very similar. When it comes to communication, having the same understanding of English language, the same nuances of culture, US developers will always have an advantage over a non-native speaker. Even a native English speaker in India, for example, they have different concepts of the language, right? So communication is almost always better with a US-based developer for the cultural reasons. You're culturally closer to them. That's not to say that you can't plan on the communication being a bit harder sometimes. There's both a time zone difference, which makes meetings a bit more awkward, but the language barrier can be a small impact or can be a major impact on your development process. So it's something to keep in mind. When it comes to the time of developing an app, they're going to be very, very similar. So there's no real difference there. When it comes to the cost, though, the US-based developers are going to be significantly more expensive than those based offshore. Generally speaking, about offshore developers can be about 1/3 to a quarter of the cost of a US developer. So if your app was quoted for $10,000 here in the US, offshore, you're probably looking at $2,500 to $3,500 for the same app. And this alone is a huge reason why a lot of businesses will choose an offshore developer. And lastly is the long-term commitment. You want to make sure that your developer team or your freelance developer is not going to just disappear as soon as the app is launched. It's very hard to have a second developer jump on board and kind of maintain an app they didn't make. There's a lot of learning they've got to do. So you want to make sure your team is going to be with you for the years to come and be able to make updates. The good news is both US and offshore-based developers usually like to have repeat customers and long-term relationships. So I would ask those questions when you do interviews of developers, but most of the ones I've met both here and offshore are very, very willing to stay engaged and help you maintain and update your app. So the next factor in a successful app launch is your business plan. This means, how is your app going to generate its revenue? It's really important to understand the different ways that can happen and to determine the best way for your business because there's no one right answer for every single business or every single app. The first type of revenue model is the in-app advertising. I think we've all seen this as when you have a little banner ad at the bottom or pop up somewhere in the app. One pro is you can have your app completely free to use forever, not even needing in-app purchases because you make money when somebody clicks on an ad. The con is that ads can be annoying. So we all know that. I think everybody is annoyed when they see ads, but they're there for a reason. It's to make the app free. So that's one option for a revenue model. The second one is in-app purchases. So the pro with this is that your app can still be free to download and use to a limited extent, but you'll offer upgrades or new features you can unlock through an in-app purchase. And the con here is that, as we've seen, the app stores charge 15 up to 30% for the revenue you're going to make for any upgrades and in-app purchases. The next model is a subscription model, which is a nice way to have a consistent flow of cash coming in. You can have monthly, annually subscriptions, whatever makes sense. But I think the biggest con with this one is that you can't really have a subscription model for every type of app. It just doesn't always work out. It doesn't always make sense. So you do need to see if this is a viable option for your business model. Freemium has, again, it's similar to in-app purchase idea. There's no barriers to a new customer using the app. They can download it for free. They can get started. But you could have certain features locked behind a paywall, or you could say after a week of using it, you are forced to upgrade and pay for it. So the con here is that it can be difficult to determine what features should be free versus paid. I'd recommend you don't try to make this decision completely on your own, but use this as part of your interview and ask that question to potential customers and see what they're willing to pay for versus what they'd expect to be free in the app. The next revenue model are paid apps. This is the 2% that are actually, you have to buy up front. It's predictable revenue earned in advance. You do lose 30% to the app stores. And the cons are that there's a lot of competition generally. So if you don't have an app that is completely original, which is hard to do nowadays, there's going to be other similar apps that might not be, you might not have to buy right off the bat. So you might lose some people to your competitor apps if you're in that situation. And the last revenue model are the sponsorships. So this would mean if if you say you're in the sports apparel business, you partner with a big sports apparel brand like Adidas. You can mention them in the app, have their logo, have a link to their store, something like that. And they will then pay you, of course, for that and pay you for the traffic that you send to them. So it's useful, and almost every business has a potential sponsor, I think. But the con here is that they're not going to be interested unless your app is big, unless you're having 100,000 users a month or something, daily active users in your app. Why would they bother to spend time? So if your app is big enough or the sponsor is interested, this can be a really good model and help you generate revenue from that app. But it doesn't make sense if you're just small and starting out. Step number 5 is marketing your app successfully online. So you're going to research and build a great app. You really need to know, how do you market it? And this is a common place where a lot of apps fail and developers get frustrated not knowing how to reach their target market. So here's a few tips, and there's a lot more depth that can be gone into, of course, with all of these things, but just as an overview. The first thing you really want to do is identify your target customers and build things like buyer personas that help you understand where they look for information, what their education level is like, what their hobbies and interests are. And again, there's a lot of marketing firms out there that can help you build buyer personas. You can use online tools, even things like ChatGPT can be surprisingly powerful at helping to do this. And that's one of the topics I'm talking about next month. So if you're interested in learning how AI and ChatGPT can help with marketing, feel free to tune into that. But you're going to want to answer the questions of where are your target customers looking for their information, gather as much as you can, and segment them into 3 to 5 different buyer personas, kind of the generalizations of your target market. It's really going to help you market to them successfully. The second phase here is that you want to determine your customers' needs and their wants. So again, your app and as well as your business, you're solving some sort of a problem for them, or you're fulfilling some sort of a desire. So formulate your marketing message with that in mind. Again, understanding each of your different buyer personas, what are they looking for specifically? You can create that marketing message very succinctly, and this will help you increase the amount of people using the app and also the amount of revenue you generate from each user. And the third phase is to build a strategy to really reach your customers. You can market your app on social media, having a Facebook page, Instagram, or TikTok. You can make free posts. This is a very common strategy. Most apps that and business owners that I've worked with do use social media for their apps. Some find it very time consuming and overwhelming. Some find that it has had a huge impact on their downloads, and others have found that it had a very minimal impact on users for their app. So it's a good thing to keep in mind when you're marketing, but you don't just need to use social media. You can also, of course, run paid ads on Google or Facebook, or if it's appropriate, you could do it on YouTube or TikTok, many ad platforms online. And lastly, of course, is traditional advertising. So you could look for, depending on what your target market is and what your product is, maybe there's a convention or a trade show or something that just makes sense to have some marketing presence at to tell people about your app. Once you've determined who you're going to market to and how you're going to market to them, you're going to work on building a prototype of your app. This is usually done very closely with your developers, but you can also get started. If you enjoy designing, you can get started with any of these free app wireframing tools that I linked to here on the right. And you're going to design something similar to this wireframe image here. This is just going to show you, if you have a logo, of course, you can put your logo on the screen, but it's going to show what buttons link to what pages. And generally speaking, what content is on each page of the app, each screen. Wireframes can be very simple, just having 4 or 5 different screens, or I've seen wireframes that go into the hundreds of screens. It depends of the complexity of your app and how much detail you want to get into here. But it's always good as you're wireframing, don't just sit in a box and try to think of the best design yourself, but get that user feedback and really let your users guide, or your potential users guide the design of it. If you don't do this yourself, your developers will probably try to do this, some better than others. But I wouldn't leave it all up to the developers. I would get as much feedback as you can. You could do things like having a simple website for your app where people can learn about it, and you can maybe meet potential users who are interested, interview them. You can also use platforms like Slack or Discord, or even things like Reddit, where you can post on an appropriate channel and get people interested in that type of an app or that type of product, and solicit their feedback there. Again, you can create these surveys, which you can post online, but you generally don't get a lot of feedback that way. Rather, I would create a survey and fill it out yourself as you interview somebody and talk to them. You can also have feedback options in the app once it's launched to give that in-app feedback. It can be about bugs, or it could just be about feature improvements. And this is all very helpful as you develop the app over the coming years to incorporate the feedback you're getting. And the last way to incorporate user feedback is pay attention to what they're saying on your social media pages. Often people will express that their joy or hate of an app on social media. It's a way to get out. People express their feelings there. So if you have a Facebook or Twitter, now called X, or Instagram pages, you can be getting some valuable feedback, and especially about people's feelings of the app on those platforms. So always keep an eye on those as you're developing the wireframes. The next step is launching your app. So how do you actually launch it successfully? How do you do it the right way to avoid making any mistakes? So again, at this point, you have had quite a lot of feedback from testers and early users, and they're going to be suggesting features and bugs that they found. So you're going to be fixing those. But officially, the best way to have a launch is by doing a beta test. And there's 2 different types of beta tests. And the first one is called an open beta test. An open beta test, these users can come from anywhere that's has an interested group. So if you have a Facebook page and you post a link to a version of the app and just say, hey, anybody can come and use this, please give me a feedback. That's an open beta test. And it'll serve a purpose of both demonstrating your product to some of your potential customers, and also getting a lot of feedback about bugs and little errors and things in the user interface that didn't make sense. Then with your development team, you can quickly be fixing these in a very rapid way. As soon as a problem is reported, they can be fixed. New updates of the beta can be pushed out. So generally speaking, You might have 5 or 10 versions of a beta pushed out before this phase is done. And at that point, you fixed many of the bugs and issues people have found. And the other type of beta test is a closed, sometimes called a private beta test. And this is when you'd release your app not to the general public online, but just to a small group of people. They might be, if you're releasing in an industry where intellectual property or you is the same, where these people will give you feedback on your app, bugs and features that they'd like to see changed or added onto, and you'll be able to then rapidly incorporate these and improve your app before you launch it to the public. So at this point, you've created a great app, you beta tested it, you fixed 99% of the bugs and the issues. You're ready to promote it because you can have your app on the App Store, but you might not have anybody ever find it there. So you need some really good ways of promotion. The first way I'd recommend is to have a website for the app. So if you have a business, let's say you have a donut bakery business, and you have a website for your freshly made donuts, maybe your app is a bunch of recipes for people to make donuts like yours at home or something. You could have your app be a part of your main business website, or you could decide, well, you want your app to have its own website. There's pros and cons to both approaches. I mean, obviously, it takes more money and time to create a second website. So that's something you will decide. But having a website or at least a web page for your app, it gives it more legitimacy. It makes it look like a real product from a really established company. And potential users are often going to go look at the website before they decide to use the app to see, who's behind it and do they believe in your business and in your values. The second best way to promote your app is on social media. So again, having those Facebook pages, Twitter, Instagram, have those set up. Be posting on those as regularly as you can. Oftentimes, Facebook is cadence about once a day is good. Twitter can be 3 or 4 times a day. Instagram can be once every other day, depending kind of on what your product is. But being active on those pages will give you a way for people to organically find out about your app. And organic means that you're not paying for that. So they're just finding it because they're searching for something and your page comes up. So starting with creating your accounts, you can also then follow people with a similar type of audience in your similar industry. And this will help you expand your reach on social media. And just a general tip for social media marketing overall is that every post shouldn't be about trying to sell the app. It should be more about information or humor or something that resonates with your audience. And you can sprinkle in links to download the app and to try it out occasionally, but it shouldn't be the main focus. You can also create a paid ad on any of these platforms, and you'll be able to target the ad on to certain demographics. So again, in your buyer personas, you identified maybe 3 to 5 different groups of people who you think will be using the app. You can make a paid ad that speaks directly to one group. Let's say they're in the outskirts of Washington, D.C. They're a certain age group. Have certain hobbies and interests. You can make an ad that only goes to those types of people. And this is a good way for you to get your app in front of that demographic that you identified. The next way to promote your app is through the ways of public relations. So if you have a network in your industry, let's again go back to the donut and the bakery business, you probably know other bakeries, your suppliers, people maybe in the wedding industry or catering. This is your network, and it's a great idea to branch out to your network when you're ready to launch your app. You can have a press release, or you can host a launch party. Some ideas I've seen be very successful. If you have some influencers in your industry, you can invite them to write a post on your social media pages. These are all good ways to kind of start spreading the word, having those guests come and contribute. Sometimes you might compensate them for their time. If it's an influencer, you might have an agreement where you pay them to write a short blog post. But that's part of your marketing budget, and it can be a very valuable way to promote your app right at the beginning. And so the influencers and celebrity endorsements, as I've said, just make sure that the influencer that you choose really does align with your app's target market. Because if they post on your page and they're going to probably reference their own social media accounts there, then all of their followers are likely going to see their post about your app. You want to make sure that their followers are really the target market and your buyer personas for your app and not the wrong market, because then you won't see a good return on investment. But if you have the right type of influencer make a post, even if you did pay them a couple $100s to do so, you might see hundreds or thousands of downloads of your app very, very quickly following that post. As people see it, they click on the link to the app from the post and they get interested in it. So either some or all of these are good tactics to use when promoting your app. So that wraps up the main body of this presentation. I'd be happy to take your questions now, and hopefully everybody had thought of a few good questions. And if you don't have any questions, I appreciate your time and I hope this information was useful to you.
Thanks, Cameron. We had a couple questions drop in. Let's see. The first one was, how do you secure your app idea and features from the developers that are not on your payroll, so it won't be sold to third parties?
That's a great question. I get asked that a lot, is how do you protect your idea, essentially your intellectual property, from the developers who might approach in interviews or who you actually pick to develop it. So the best way to do that is through what's called a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA. This is a very common form, legal paperwork, where, especially in the US, it's very enforceable. If your developer signed an NDA saying they wouldn't disclose, reveal, or copy anything that you ever talked to them about, and then they did that, you would probably win suing them in the US. It gets trickier, though, if you've picked an overseas developer, let's say India. I mean, I'm not a legal expert, but I have not heard of many cases where a US company was successfully able to, win a lawsuit against an Indian developer if they broke an NDA. So there's some considerations there. I would, if you have more questions about the legal aspect of protecting this, I would talk to a lawyer, but certainly an NDA is the first step, and it's easier to enforce in the US than overseas.
Next question. Can we just have an app and no website, or is it just an add-on to a website? And then it follows with, and I'm not quite sure about the second part, and if the website itself is mobile friendly.
Yeah. So that's a great question. When we talk about developing an app, you can develop an app that is to run on a phone. And there's also some apps that are developed that are essentially just a wrapper for a website. So some apps can be a website, and you'll download the app in the store, but all the content of what's inside the app just goes to a website, and the website is kind of a mobile friendly website, so it looks good on the phone. That was more common in the past, I think 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. I think there's been more security risks with that type of app, and I'm not 100% sure, but the app stores might be blocking those types of apps more and more. A developer would probably have the most up-to-date information. So if you're planning on making a website and then having your app just essentially be a wrapper for the website, it could work in some situations, but it's generally not the best way to go about developing an app for the security reasons I mentioned. But I also think another part of your question was, if you're making a website just to promote your app, right? Just kind of a marketing website that talks about how the app solves your problems and has a link to download it, then that's what I recommend for pretty much every app developer. Or if you're going to create an app, have that kind of a website, because it gives you that sense of legitimacy. Your customers are going to know that there's a real reputable company behind this. Their website looks like it's all in proper English. It wasn't made by some fly-by-night company that looks kind of shady. So the website gives your customers that sense of feeling comfortable about the app and who made it. So I always recommend that. It's a pretty small investment overall to make a simple website marketing your app.
And can you explain, what does the term beta mean?
Yeah, so a beta just means before it's ready to be released. Now, I think every app in the world, their developers never feel like it's completely done. Every app It's always getting updates or bug fixes. So your app is never really 100% done. You're never going to be done fixing it, especially because new versions of operating systems make updates, on iPhone and Android. So apps that used to work one way, now they don't work as well. So you have to always be maintaining your apps. But a beta means before you're ready to kind of launch what you feel is a good version to the public, version like 1.0. It's pre 1.0, so it would be something that has some rough edges. And that's why your beta testers, you would always say this is a beta version. So they'll know, well, if it crashes or if a button doesn't link to the right page, there's going to be some issues like that. And this is just a time before the app's super finalized to fix bugs, because it's easier to finalize to make fixes to an app while it's still kind of in development than once it's been released as version 1 and you have to go back and change things. So it's just all a means of saving time and money for you as the creator of this app.
If we wanted corporate businesses to display ads in our apps, how would we get those sponsorships and how much should we charge for display ads and search ads?
So when it comes to displaying ads in your app, there's two main ways to do it. Yes, there are like corporate sponsorships. So going back to the fitness apparel example, if you want to go after Adidas or Nike, you would work directly with their kind of marketing department, and they would probably provide you exactly the images that need to be shown in the app. You'd have some agreement of where they were going to be displayed, how long they're going to be displayed for, all of those details would be worked out. The other type of inserting ads into the app, which is more common, is to have a space for a banner of an app, but let an ad network like Google actually determine what ads are shown in your app. So many apps with ads, the app is not itself, the creator of the app has not selected which ads will be shown. They've said to an ad network, okay, here's the space in my ad. You decide however you want with your algorithms what ad you're going to show in my app. And you're going to pay me a little bit for each ad shown, especially when somebody clicks on it, then you're going to get paid most for that. But you don't have control over the ads in that case. So the two main approaches: one, you go direct with a large company like Adidas, and you work with them to design the layout of the ad. Secondly, you'd go just with an ad network, and then all you do is specify where in the app, and they choose the ad to show based on a lot of different data they have. So yeah, probably the second option is the most common, right? We see these ad networks in apps a lot, and the creator of the app is not choosing what ad is shown.
Okay, so this next question, this attendee, they built an app and they're struggling to make it onto the local news to show it off. Do you have any good tips on getting on local press?
That's a great question. I think one of the best strategies is having a connection at a press office. For example, in Central Virginia, near Charlottesville, I used to work with a guy who now is the editor of a local newspaper. So if there's something that I want that I think would be interesting to be in their newspaper, I can just contact this editor. So having some sort of a connection or a reference or referral will really help, especially with smaller local papers. But if you don't have that type of connection, you probably just need to reach out to them through their main email address and say, here's what I have. You could try to create a buyer persona for them, right? Say, what are they interested in? What do they want me to tell them about my app? So they will mention it, in the news. Understand really what they're looking for. You could do some research and see what types of technology or what types of apps they might have done a news article on in the past. Make sure your app kind of fits the general category that they like to post
Can I
in.
interject? It is about,
Yeah.
it's a travel app, so that might help you
Okay, travel app.
fine-tune, yeah.
Great. So I would say, yeah, if that newspaper has a travel column, travel writer, that would be your first person to want to reach out to. And if not, then again, see what other maybe apps or travel apps I might have posted and written stories on in the past, and approach them and say, you did this story 5 years ago. Here's another opportunity. This is why I think you should talk about it. But again, really do your research on them. Make sure that you're going to have a really good first impression. I think that increases your chance of getting their attention.
What's the most expensive app and what drives up the cost?
Maybe the person can clarify. Do you mean the most expensive app to develop or the most expensive app to buy?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's
So,
two. two different
If
ways to view
the
that.
person who put that question in here, what's the most expensive app? What drives up cost to develop? Thank you.
So there's a lot of reasons why an app can cost a lot, but generally it comes into how complicated the app is and how many people needed to work on that development team. I don't know exactly what the most expensive app of all time is, but probably something like Facebook, where Facebook has like 10,000 developers that do nothing but work on that app, right? And that app is one of the most downloaded apps of all time. So it's a very expensive app. I mean, they invest hundreds of millions of dollars a year into one app, but it also does a lot, right? And if you think of all the code that the app has, all the stuff you see on the screen, all the stuff in the back end, that's what makes that app very, very expensive. So the more screens you have and the more complexity you have of things running in the background, those contribute mostly to the cost.
In your development experience, I have a two-sided marketplace. That's, do you want to, the person who dropped that in, you want to elaborate on? See what we get. Nothing yet.
Okay. Any other questions? We can go back
that
to
was
that.
following up on the last question. In your development experience, I have a two-sided marketplace. Do you need more, Cameron?
The last question about the most expensive app.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
follow-up to that. Yes.
Also, if this individual has a two-sided marketplace and they're asking you what the most expensive two-sided marketplace app is, I mean, I don't know off the top of my head. It's a great question. Yeah, I mean, if you think of Airbnb, for example, that's two-sided. You have the people with the house and the people getting the house. That's also a very, very expensive app. They also have thousands of developers. So that's one example of a very expensive two-sided marketplace.
They're asking what's the most expensive one that you've designed?
Oh, that I've designed. I've worked, so I'm not a professional full-time developer. I mainly work with strategy and business strategy, but I worked on a couple two-sided marketplaces. Generally speaking, for the clients I worked for in Virginia, the cost was between $50,000 and $75,000 at the high end. I've also worked on a few two-sided marketplaces that were much less, eight to 9,000. So I've worked on those types of apps that were around 8,000 up to about $75,000.
Do we have
So if
any
you're
other
looking to,
questions? I'm sorry.
yeah, well, I'll just say that maybe you're looking to price out this app for your two-sided marketplace, or maybe you've already developed the app and you're trying to see, did you pay a good amount? That makes sense. It depends on which developers you went with. I would say if they were offshore, 8,000 would be reasonable. If they were here in Virginia, probably up to $75,000, I would assume.
And the attendee said you answered their question, so thank you. Looking for one in Virginia. So
yeah. And also, I'll just say, often a major question in people's minds is, how do I find a good developer? I have contacts here in Virginia as well as offshore, so feel free to email the email address here on your screen, which is help@virginiasbdc.org. You can just say you attended the presentation today, and that email will get to me, and I'm happy to provide information like that to you.
Great. So they're asking, yeah, if you can recommend one. So that's great. Yeah, just email the help email and we'll get you all set up there. So, okay, do we have any other questions? We still have time here, so we can pick Cameron's brain. Nothing dropping in right now. So while we wait, Cameron, do you have any final words of wisdom? See if something else drops in.
Well, I appreciate everybody's questions and attending today. I think that developing an app can be a really smart move for a lot of businesses, and I hope that I showed in what situations it's most beneficial and what situations maybe you'd want to shy away from it. And if you do decide to go develop an app, what are those main 8 steps you really need to be aware of to make sure you don't make some common mistakes?
June said, excellent presentation, Cameron. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. So I don't think we have anything else. So I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up. All I can say is don't get outside because my daughter just told me she's nannying and it is super duper hot. If you're in the Northern Virginia area, stay inside where it's cool. stay safe. But I will wrap us up. I do appreciate everyone who attended today, and I thank Cameron, as always, for very informational webinar. And as a reminder, you will receive an email with a link to the recording and to the slides. And if you'd like to sign up for upcoming webinars, you can do that at any time by visiting virginiasbdc.org/training. This webinar and other SBD resources are designed to be used in collaboration with your local SBDC advisors. You can sign up for a free and confidential session by emailing help@virginiasbdc.org or via our website. And yep, Yolanda also said wonderful presentation, and she will be in touch. And I want to thank everyone again and hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.